In today's video, we're going to be answering the question as to whether or not you should be fasting on the carnivore diet. We're going to look at why it's actually easier to fast on a carnivore diet than with a regular diet, as well as all the effects fasting on a carnivore diet will have for you. And if you stick around to the end, I'll give you my recommendation as to what I believe is the optimal number of meals per day. So, why is fasting easier on the carnivore diet? Well, it's very simple. When you eat carbohydrates, your body runs primarily on carbohydrates. And when you eat fat, your body primarily runs on fat. Now, the issue you'll come into when your body's used to running on carbohydrates is that after it's ran out of carbohydrates that you've consumed, it's not very effective at tapping into its own body fat. However, when your body runs on fat, as soon as you've run out of the fat you've eaten, your body can much more easily tap into its own body fat. This is what is known as being fat adapted. This right here is one of the key reasons why most people on the carnivore diet never get hungry. A lot of people want to do fasting protocols, but they really struggle because after a certain time period, they get incredibly hungry. So if you ask someone who wants to fast, doing it on carnivore will be significantly easier for you. One of the main benefits reported about fasting is the cognitive benefit that it provides. A lot of people skip breakfast for this reason. They believe that their mind just seems sharper in the morning if they don't eat, as well as the fact that you often feel like you have more energy. As soon as you eat, you go into this rest and digest mode. We see this out in the wild. Most animals, after they eat a massive large meal, they immediately fall asleep afterwards, and I'm sure we've all experienced this. You eat a large meal and you immediately feel lethargic and tired. If you think about this from an evolutionary point of view, I mean, as soon as we hunted a large animal and we ate it, our job was done, so then we could rest. Another well-known benefit of fasting is that our body goes through a process known as autophagy. The word autophagy comes from Greek words meaning self-eating, and that is essentially what our body does. When we go through this process, it's our body's way of removing its damaged cells, and it does this essentially by eating them, hence the name. One hormone that we see surge when we're in a fasted state is growth hormone, and as the name suggests, growth hormone is responsible for growth, whether it be the growth of bones as we're growing, the growth of new cells, or even muscle mass. Elevated growth hormone is definitely a good thing. However, there is one key problem when it comes to carnivore and fasting and receiving these benefits, and that is that most of these benefits come as a result of having low insulin levels. Now, insulin is responsible for bringing our blood sugar levels back down. When we eat something, our blood sugar levels spike and insulin comes up to help bring them back down. But here's the thing. We're not eating carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are what trigger these massive blood sugar spikes. So when we're eating carbohydrates, our insulin levels are very high. But because we're on the carnivore diet, which is a low carbohydrate diet, or in some cases even as close to a zero carbohydrate diet as you can possibly get, we don't have any of these blood sugar spikes, which means our insulin levels stay incredibly low, and therefore we get these benefits anyway. A ketogenic diet is often referred to as a fasting mimicking diet, which I mean essentially it kind of is. So all of these benefits I've talked about, you get them simply by being on the proper human diet. Now, there are a couple of other considerations I want to point you to. One of them being that restricting the amount of meals you're having is a great way of reducing the total amount of energy you're consuming. As I'm sure most of us know, fat is stored energy. If we consume excess energy than we burn, it's stored as fat. And if we burn more energy than we consume, our body taps into its own body fat and we burn fat. Now, carnivore makes this process considerably easier. One, because our hunger hormones regulate, so we end up eating less energy, and our metabolism also upregulates because our cells aren't inflamed and therefore they can produce more energy. But energy still does matter on a carnivore diet. So if we're eating 3 meals per day and we cut that down to 2, we've just reduced our energy intake by 33%. Assuming that the meals stay the same size. So if you are trying to lose weight, maybe having 1 less meal per day may be incredibly advantageous. That way you can still consume large meals, feel satisfied whilst keeping the amount of energy you're consuming down. Now, I would be all for fasting if it wasn't for the fact that it affected our stress hormones. When we go into a fasted state, many of our stress hormones elevate. Our bodies still think we're in caveman times, so when we haven't eaten for an extended period of time, it gets pretty stressful. Obviously, if we don't get food, we're going to die. And throughout a large part of history, I'm sure there are many people that starve to death. One of these stress hormones, which is actually an incredibly complex hormone, but it's still a stress hormone, is cortisol. And whilst cortisol is incredibly essential, prolonged elevated cortisol levels are definitely not a good thing. It's for one going to affect the amount of muscle mass we're carrying. It can also affect our sleep, as well as our mood. There are a number of issues that come as a result of high cortisol, and it's definitely not something we want. So with all of this in mind, what is my recommendation? Well, once again, I think it's incredibly simple. we need to listen to our bodies. If our bodies get hungry and we're eating the proper human diet. Now note, this distinction is incredibly important because when we're eating all the ultra-processed garbage, even just regular high carbohydrate foods like fruits and some vegetables, it's going to seriously mess with our hunger signaling. But since we're on carnivore, our hunger signaling works exactly as it's designed to. So if your body's hungry, it's my belief that your body is trying to say, hey, we need some nutrients, please provide them to us. So I think you should listen to this. If you get hungry when you wake up and at lunch and at dinner, have 3 meals per day. If you only get hungry every second day for a while, eat every second day. When you're on carnivore, your body has this sort of natural proclivity to regulate its weight. So if you are someone who's overweight, what you'll find is that you never get hungry. And as you start getting leaner and leaner and leaner, you might notice that you might actually want to eat 2 to 3 meals per day, even if you're only consuming one for the majority of your fat loss journey. Anyways, I greatly appreciate you all watching. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I think you'll like this other video of mine.